new chapter for TNT. We're red, ready, and responsible. Vote PNM. Great is the PNM.
Man is it in your hand. PNM is the plan. Ready, hold it steady. We are one. One blood flowing through we vein. We stand strong and we on the road again. We are one.
Having spent 4 decades at the heart of Trinidad and Tobago's political landscape, a leader forged in the fire of governance, a statesman who has stood resilient through every challenge thrown his way. Dr. Keith Christopher Rowley is not just the 7th Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. He is a man whose leadership has shaped the trajectory of our nation with a will and an unwavering commitment to progress. He served Martin West since 1991 and was a steadfast voice for the people of Trinidad and Tobago, championing development, a pillar of the People's National Movement. He took the helm of the party in 2010. He built and re-energized the PNM, leading it to resounding victories in both 2015 and 2020 general elections, securing his place in history as one of the nation's most formidable leaders. Today, as our political leader, Keith Rowley stands tall as a titan of democracy, a man whose vision, strength, and unwavering commitment to national progress have forever changed the course of our nation. His legacy is carved in resilience, marked by bold reforms and defined by relentless service to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. His vision and love for Trinidad and Tobago is unquestionable. And when we look at Eric Eustace Williams, we know that great is the PNM. When we look at George Michael Chambers, we know that great is the PNM. And when we look at Keith Christopher Rowley, we know that great is the PNM. Join with me as we welcome our political leader, our champion whose name is etched in the history books of Trinidad and Tobago, as I introduce to speak with you the indomitable Keith Christopher Rowley.
Hey, we got this. Hey,
PNM.
Our political leader, our last MP for Martin West, Keith Christopher Rowley.
we're making it through this moment. You are the reason. Higher and higher heights is our limit. So we ain't leaving. No one behind, we will not desert you. Come on, protect the future. I know we can do this thing. Yeah. So right now, let me fix up.
Party chairman, deputy political leaders, executive members of the People's National Movement, supporters of the People's National Movement, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, gathered here in your thousands at Etihad Ground and following us in your tens of thousands around the nation and around the world. Good evening from Trinidad and Tobago. Good evening from Tunapuna. On this day in April of 2025, history is being made in our country. Many of you would have heard me in the first week of January speaking to you from Tobago, that you, having had me as the leader of this party and the leader of this country, that I had taken the decision that I will step away from those responsibilities, first and foremost as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, and I have done so. Tonight, you might ask why I'm on this platform, and I tell you, where else should I be? I'm here in my capacity as the political leader of the most effective political entity in the Western Hemisphere, dating back to 1956 and as modern as 2025. The removal of myself from office is a deliberate act on my part to do two things: to revitalize the party which I led since 2010, and to revitalize the government and nation which I led since 2015. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, as we are within hours of a general election, you would all have noticed that for the last 5 weeks, anybody with 2 brain cells could have sat down and write a script for a political leader outlining all the difficulties that you may find in the nation of Trinidad and Tobago. But I will tell you, there is no nation in the world that if somebody gives you a piece of paper and asks you to write down all the things that you think should be done, you'll come up with a long list. And if you are the political leader of the party for which that list was made, you can spend the whole month of the election campaign promising the sun, the moon, and the stars, but it means nothing to the people that you want to lead. I'm sure all of you would by now be fed up of your ears being rinsed out with promises and promises and promises. Of course, if you know that you're coming up against the PNM in the general election, you could make any amount of promise you want, because you know you will never get the opportunity to prove any of those promises. You're just wasting time playing the fool. Ladies and gentlemen, on the other hand, you had a government that had been in office since September 2015 to today, and every difficulty this country could have faced as a nation, we had to face in the last 9.5 years. And that government, while it would not have solved every problem, it would have engaged the priority list of things to do, things to get done to protect your lives, to protect your jobs, and to protect the nation of Trinidad and Tobago. And that government is the People's National Movement, PNM. And as I step away from government in this country, I do so confident, knowing that I leave behind and I leave aside to move forward on the 29th of April, one of the best slates of candidates ever produced by any political party in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. In that team, you have people with significant experience for whom cabinet is not a novelty. People like Camille Robinson-Regis, the longest serving Minister of Finance, Colin Imbert, is there. You have Faris Al-Rawi, an Attorney General of many years. You have Marvin Gonzalez, a man who has distinguished himself as a go-getting minister. You have Nian Gatsby-Dolly, who is now closing off on 10 years as a minister of government. Many of the team you see are young people. They are still having a future alongside the experienced few in the government, but they too are experienced. And alongside them, you have other new young people who are joining to strengthen the government and the party. You have people like Yunus Ibrahim in Barataria San Juan. He had not been in government, but he had been in the parliament, in the seat of management of the affairs of parliament. You have Roger Monroe, who had not been in the cabinet, but he had been for 5 years a serving MP in the eastern county of Toko Sangad. Down there in La Brea, you have Randall Michel, who had been in cabinet and who had been as MP in the parliament and is now back representing La Brea. Every seat you can look at, you will see something interesting on the PNM slate. In Chaguanas East, we have Rishi Sukai, who is the best prepared candidate that Chaguanas East has ever presented in Trinidad and Tobago. And I can tell you, as the head of the cabinet that had the responsibility for steering these young people from 2015 to now, and to have them come before you unsoiled, uncorrupted, you, the people, should be grateful that your youngsters have now come of age. I have had under my tutelage the 2 young ladies from Tobago, Ayana Webster Roy in Tobago East and Shamfa Kojo in Tobago West. Today, they are experienced ministers of government to give Trinidad and Tobago even better service. And as we go forward, we look for the best of our young people, and we produce people like Karim Marcel. And we produce people like Sanju Budu in Kumuto, Manzanilla. So I am particularly comforted by the fact that as I thank you, the people of the PNM and the wider national community of Trinidad and Tobago, for having entrusted me with the responsibility of managing the cabinet, of protecting the country, of steering us through thick and thin, I am comforted that as I step forward, I leave behind a strong team of the best that this nation could produce. You would have heard every promise to solve every problem. But the one thing that was short in this sea of promises is solutions to the problem. You would hear this lady who is opposed to me, she could count all who kill who. That doesn't tell me how you're going to prevent the next killer from killing the next victim. You would hear that they will reduce VAT on 7,000 food items. That sounds good. But already, almost 100 food items are VAT-free, basic items. They never told you which food item VAT will be taken off from. And when I forced her to tell me which one, she said, fresh beef. Fresh beef in the market. Madam Head of the UNC, fresh beef in the market never had VAT, like all fresh produce in the market already VAT-free. They promised public servants to give them the biggest back pay that they could think of, as much as $18 billion worth of back pay, a 14% increase. The government has 90,000 workers on the government payroll. They promised to give them a 15% increase. That would be $18 billion. And every night, Every day they're in your ears with these promises. Now, of course, if they ever try to do that, as they have written, as they have said, the only way they could begin to think of doing that is to devalue the currency. So every US dollar, instead of being costing you 7 Trinidad and Tobago dollars, it will have to cost you more. That devaluation. Tonight, I'm saying to you here in Tunapuna, the campaign is over. The fun and games that they were having, over. The payment of money to characters to create intimidation and to do all kinds of unnecessaries, that is over. The issue from this moment going forward is what is to happen to the country on the 29th of April. Because it is on that day that the rubber reaches the road. It is on that day that you, with your finger, using that vote that you have, will determine on the 28th who will be the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. I know who it will not be. It will not be me, because I have resigned and walked away from that office. But tonight, you all know me, I've been with you for a long time. And I don't come to you and read no script. I come to you as a nation and I talk to you. But tonight, I want to be sure that I make no mistake. So I bring a script to read for you, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And I want you to pay attention, whether you are in Karapichaima, in Cuba or Carenage, in Tunapuna, or out there in Tamana, in Port of Spain, or up in Kachip. The Prime Minister on the 29th of April will be the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. Wherever you are in Trinidad and Tobago, that person will be your Prime Minister. And you have a sacred responsibility not to do anything to allow any unqualified person to hold that office, because after you vote on the 20th of April, if you make the mistake of putting the wrong person, if you think you were in the frying pan with all the complaints and all the promises, then you will be in the blazing fire from April 29th. So let's examine the options. Let's examine the options. In the red corner, you have Stuart Richard Young, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago.
PNM.
In the yellow corner, you have a former Prime Minister, Kamla Persad Bissessar, who was voted out of office as quickly as the country could have done it when she had the office of Prime Minister. What would you say about Stuart Young that qualifies him to be the Prime Minister of your choice? You will say that he is an insightful young man. On the other hand, his opponent is retrogressive, means looking backwards all the time, because the front is too dangerous, work too hard. On the red corner, Stuart Young, he is professionally accomplished. I could tell you that because he worked out of my office for 9.5 years as minister in the office of the Prime Minister. In the yellow corner, the opponent had an unimpressive legal practice. In the red corner, Stuart Young, working with me in the office of the Prime Minister, when you were facing a situation that many of you still have not understood, that if we had not been successful in renegotiating new revenues from our existing gas contracts, you would have been facing something worse than any of the descriptions that they make to you today. And Stuart Young brought that. heading that team, brought us $38 billion more in revenues on contracts that we would not have earned that from. He is results driven. On the other hand, his opponent is a classified obstructionist. We have not raised a single issue in this country or in the parliament where Mrs. Kamla Persad Bissessar did not find reason to object. She is an obstructionist. Imagine we go to parliament. We go to the parliament to tell this country that men must not marry children and to make it unlawful to marry young girls below the age of 18. And a woman as opposition leader will not support that because she opposes every single thing. And when she thought that she didn't have enough opposition in the parliament on that particular score, she brought in 2 specialist old men to come and put on the Hansard why these old hardback men should be allowed to marry girls at age 10 and age 12. I'm pleased to announce to you today that notwithstanding all of that, the PNM has put on the law that young girls beneath the age that's accepted must be allowed to marry anybody. Our girls must be allowed to develop and become adults before they get married. I could also tell you that Stuart Young is clearly very physically and mentally fit because the Prime Minister's job is a very stressful job and you can't hand it or you shouldn't hand it to anybody to deputize for you. The other one, she is physically incapable and mentally unfit. And in the last time, 10 years ago, she handed the office of Prime Minister over to unauthorized people. The way she did it is every time she left the country, another person in the cabinet is put to act as Prime Minister. Virtually every single person in that government, all 31 of them, had a tush in the office of Prime Minister. That is how she sees the office of Prime Minister. And of course, when I went into the office there in September 2015, after her term had ended, I met a truckload of files on the desk dating back to 2013, 2014, and 2015 before I got there, and I had to sign them because a Prime Minister had to sign those documents. That is what she's coming 10 years later to tell you, that she is the salvation for Trinidad and Tobago. But she could say whatever she wants to know. It is what you say that matters. It is how you vote that a Prime Minister will go into that office. And if you want to leave a fit, intellectually sound, enthusiastic Stuart Young and go and vote for decrepit Kamla, that is your choice. That's your choice. I could tell you, Stuart Young is a modern world leader. He is comfortable in the corridors of power in London, in Tokyo, in Amsterdam, in New York, in Washington, and in Port of Spain. He is one of the new and rising Caribbean leaders who is highly respected. But of course, on the other hand, you have this return of the failed Prime Minister who is completely out of touch with reality. Imagine we were facing all this problem in the gas business, and when she jumped in to have her say and to pretend to be in charge, she's asking, what shareholding do we have in Train 2 and Train 3? So you were Prime Minister of this country for 5 years, and you did not know an important piece of information like what shareholding the government has in the major money-making business in the country. Would you believe that? She had to be told by us that the government has no shareholding in Trains 2. no shareholding in Train 3. And what Stuart Young and the PNM under the Prime Minister is doing is negotiating under the new circumstances to get revenue from new shareholding. And Stuart Young led the team that was successful. And today we have in fact restructured the LNG business, and we are in line to get steady revenues, more revenues from the LNG business. So if you have a choice, as you do now, you will consider the person who couldn't even be bothered to know what shareholding we had against the person who didn't only know, but know that we had to renegotiate it and to successfully do it. The choice is yours. Of course, Stuart Young has an admirable work ethic. He's one of the hardest working men in the country, and certainly one of the outstanding members of the cabinet. What is the record of his opponent? Indisciplined and, of course, inconsistent. Having been told by her friends that she likes her weekends to be 5 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. That is what you need at this time, where we are still in great difficulty in managing difficult issues, promising you the sun, the moon, and the stars, and lying about it because they already agree that if you put God out your thoughts and let them become the government on April 29th, the first thing they are going to do is to devalue the Trinidad and Tobago dollar. When we raised it, they're saying it is not true. Well, if it is not true, why did you say so in the parliament? Why did you write it down in your document? You must come now and defend your policy for your anticipated program. Don't just say it is not true. The document is yours, but of course you know that is their style. How many of you were here in 2010 when she said everybody at age 60 will get a old age pension at age 60? Everybody. When they came into office and people said, well, where's my pension you promised? She said, we didn't do that. We didn't say that. It's Ernie Ross and them who make a mistake in the manifesto. Look you straight in the face and tell you this thing that is written in the manifesto is Ernie Ross make a mistake. They are liars and they believe that you are stupid. That's why they could come and promise you all these things, knowing that the country can't afford it. I represent a government which stands in the breach. My 41 colleagues, we know that we have to stand in defense of Trinidad and Tobago, because if we play politics with the country's economy, with the country's treasury, it is the children who will pay the price, because you adults have already got your share from sweet TNT. It is the young people who will pay the price of being deprived of opportunity. But this government which I led, and the one that Stuart Young is leading, which Foster Cummings is the Minister of Youth Development, is not by accident. It is because we see the most important service of this country is to build a future and build opportunity for young people so they can go forward with boundless faith in their destiny in the nation of Trinidad and Tobago. And I could tell you one thing. I could tell you one thing about Stuart Young. He is patriotic. And Kamla Persad Bissessar is the opposite. She is unpatriotic. How you would explain that while our gas production is going down because our gas fields are being emptied after 30 years of constant extraction, you have your government looking around, what do we do to get gas in the next 5 years, for the next 10 years, to keep us there for the next 20 years? I led a government that led a delegation to Caracas to talk to the government of Venezuela, our nearest neighbor that has a lot of spare gas. You would think that the opposition will support us and hope that we do well. No, no, no. Everything the government did on that score, they came out publicly in front of you and tried to undermine it. The record will show that while the government of Trinidad and Tobago was negotiating with the Venezuelan government to bring about this new development so that our hibiscus platform on the Bocas could receive gas from 17 kilometers away in the Dragon Field, they were publicly excoriating the government and supporting somebody called President Guaido. Not the president in office, you know, supporting somebody else, who somebody else say is the president of Venezuela. And as fate will have it, the Americans put sanctions on Venezuela to suit the Americans. She and Munilal and all of them calling on the Americans to put sanctions on Rowley and Young because we talk to the government of Venezuela. They are unpatriotic, they are dangerous, they're worthless, they're lazy, and they're useless, and they have nothing about it except for you. But I could spend the whole night here. I could spend the whole night here telling you about how they should not be considered. But I'll tell you something else instead. I will tell you that that thing that they pick up there and call a coalition of interests. If you had any doubt, the name of that group of people should cause you to be concerned. A coalition of interests is a political entity that is looking for government in this country. You have to ask yourself, what interests and whose interests? Roger could say what he wants. They make a deal with him to give him the refinery because he has this love for a refinery that he can't afford. That group from OWTU, they had been given a number of options because they said they want to buy the refinery. The last thing they did in the last go-around was to submit a bank document that is supposed to be fraudulent and is now attracting the attention of the police. And while that is so, he could have coalition of interests with the scandalous UNC corrupt people to become the government of Trinidad and Tobago. Every single new person who has come up in front of the UNC recently, there's a requirement they have to be of interest to the police. And as I tell you that, you must understand what happened here today. From this PNM platform, one of the brightest young stars in the UNC has chosen a side in this country, and he has chosen the People's National Movement.
PNM.
And alongside him are other parliamentary colleagues of ours. I could tell you today that two of the brightest stars in the UNC party and two of the best parliamentarians opposite to the PNM in the parliament was Dinesh Rambali and Anita Haynes. They were UNC when they came in, but they are here with us today in the PNM because they are of the future while the rest are of the past. And I'm saying something to UNC members and UNC supporters. Before you jump on your high horse and start to prance about who left your party and where they're gone, spend some time in the saddle trying to figure out how the UNC could have lost Dinesh Rambali and Anita Haynes. And their loss is our gain. Welcome to the People's National Movement.
PNM.
Our slogan, written in our fundamental document, that we are not a party in the ordinary sense of the word, but rather we are a rally. And in this rally, you could come from any race, color, creed, class, or other political party. When you see the light, and you see that the light is the PNM, follow the light and end up in the People's National Movement.
PNM.
The last thing I want to tell you is that many of them who working so hard to try to get into government, if you examine their circumstances closely, you will find that the interest that they have, which has formed that coalition, where the only thing they have in common is hatred for the PNM. But they have all kinds of divisions that keep them apart. But all they want to do is to try to dupe you into voting for them, and then they want to use the government to avoid the courthouse and the jail. I've pointed out before, 25% of them already have issues with the police. And instead of staying away from public life, they're up in your face like Jack Warner. He recommending to you who should be leader of the country, when you should be saying to him, hit the road, Jack. And don't you come back no more, no more, no more. You have people who the judge has already taken a serious position on. You have files on people. How many of you have forgotten what live sport was in this country? A member of the parliament had to resign in disgrace because $6 million of live sport became $400 million of expenditure. And the person who protected that, who encouraged that, is out there telling you, put me back as Prime Minister and all your troubles will be over. The person who allowed the contractors to go away with $971 million because they took the clause out of the contract to allow the contractor to claim that money. It was Stuart Young who had to go to the court all over the world to fight for that money, and we won the case, and we came back with $900 million. And they're coming to tell you that they will take, the reason why you should vote for them is that they will take VAT off whiskey, and they will take VAT off vodka, and they will take VAT off crab legs, and they will take VAT off caviar. How does that help you? And of course, I want to say to public servants, 2,000 of you have voted for a young woman who was already going astray. She is now on the UNC platform. PSA has 20,000 members. 2,000 of them voted in an election. All she could find to do is to come out and encourage the UNC to try to get into government on the promise of a big payday, risking the jobs of thousands of public servants and the country ending up in the IMF. We, and for me in particular, I have survived in this political environment for many years. I've climbed many mountains. I've overcome many hurdles on one principle, and one principle alone as I go forward. I believe that the vast number of people in Trinidad and Tobago are decent, right-thinking citizens. And when the crunch comes, as it comes on the 28th, next Monday, the majority of persons, decent, right-thinking citizens, will choose the PNM and put country before party and before self. And on that basis, it is on that basis, and in your large numbers here tonight, and your thousands listening at home, it's on that basis that I have the confidence that come the 28th of April, you will vote solidly to keep Stuart Young as the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago.
PNM.
It is for me a particular pleasure, as I say to you, I have kept the faith, I've run the course, and all that is left for me to do tonight is to recommend to you the person who, in my judgment, is best qualified to lead the country that I led, and that person is Stuart Richard Young.
Great is the PNM.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is not a gamble. This is not to be an experiment. This is to think solidly and soberly. We're not going to play a fet match. We're not going to play a pickup side. We are talking here about the future of our country and the future of our children and grandchildren. And in that consideration, Jack Warner, Kamla Persad Bissessar, and all their friends of police interests who have a record of doing dangerous things in this country. Even in this campaign, in many of the constituencies that they say they want to win, they've gone into the constituencies, gather all the characters that you know very well. They're against gangs and they're against gang leaders. But come election, they put them all in a package, give them money and send them to terrorize people. That alone should tell you that they are people who will do anything for power, anything for office, even if it means destroying the community. So ladies and gentlemen, I have one vote, and early on Monday morning, I intend to go out to vote. I intend to vote solidly for the People's National Movement. I am asking you to join me in supporting Stuart Young to continue as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And when you would have done that, you would have protected our nation, protected our treasury, protected our children's future, and we can all say, great is the PNM.
PNM.
Great is the PNM.
PNM.
Great is the PNM.
PNM.
Great is Trinidad and Tobago. We shall always prevail. Thank you.
New chapter for TNT. We're red, ready, and responsible. Vote PNM. Great is the PNM.
We are one.